Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Collabcast with Sam and Pete. It is just Sam today, but we're so happy to have you. We have a lot of special guests on with us today from our partner, Adobe Sign. So let's get right into it. We're going to talk today about health and life sciences in the age of digitization with Microsoft Teams and Adobe Sign. So we're going to get a little bit of context on the healthcare industry as a whole, where it's going, and then you're actually going to see live a real demo with Microsoft Teams and Adobe Sign. So with that, we have a couple of presenters on today. We have Jayashree Ramakrishna, and she is the head of industry strategy at Adobe for healthcare and life sciences. So she'll be talking to you first. Then we also have Michael Point, and he is the head of technical product marketing and evangelism. And you'll see the demo right from Michael as well. So as always, if you haven't been here before, after this, I'm going to post everything on our healthcare and life sciences blog. It's aka.ms/HLS blog. You'll have access to the recording, any questions that were asked, any answers to those, anything that we need to follow up on, all of the presenters' LinkedIn details, any contact information you need, will all be there afterwards. So make sure to visit us again, aka.ms/HLS blog. And if you haven't used Teams live events before, please, 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 we want you to ask questions. We are here on the Microsoft side, on the Adobe side for you for this hour. So please ask. We're going to moderate all the questions. I'm going to be answering them in the background. If it's something that applies to the group as a whole, then we'll definitely bring it up for our presenters. That's why they're here today. And even if you don't have a question, let us know where you're from. I'm from New York, coming in from Manhattan, and we have people from all over the world that usually join us. So even if you don't have a question, let us know your name or where you're from. We'd love to get to know you. So if you haven't used Teams live events, this is how you're going to get in contact with us. On the upper right-hand corner, there's a question mark with a box around it. That's where you're going to click for the Q&A. Now, you won't be able to come off mute. You're actually viewing this through Teams live events, so this is the way that you communicate with us. And again, I might respond to you privately. I might publish it. I might bring it up to the presenters in real time, depending on how relevant it is for the rest of our audience. So this is where it's going to come up. You can add your name if you want. Like I said, where you're from. We'd love to hear from you and ask a question, make a comment. Again, we're here for you today. So with that, we will go ahead and transition on to the presentation. First up, we actually have Jay. She's going to talk to us a little bit more about the future of the healthcare industry, where it's going, and how Microsoft Teams and Adobe Sign play into that. So Jay, if you want to go ahead and share your screen there, you'll be good to go.
Thank you, Samantha. I hope everyone can see my screen now.
Almost. Let me put it live here. There you go.
All right. So in this age of quantum computing, 2020 has shown how stagnant healthcare has been in its modernization journey. Adobe, along with its partner ecosystem, has been playing a key role in modernizing this highly brick and mortar, paper-driven industry. My main message in today's presentation is how Adobe and our partnership with Microsoft is creating a frictionless experience as this industry digitizes. Over the next 30 minutes, I'm going to kick off the session with a trivia and a short poll. I'll walk you through a snapshot of the industry and the expanding role of telehealth with a quick overview of what we mean by a frictionless experience. Then in the next 10 minutes, my colleague Michael Point will introduce himself and give a demo of Adobe's live signing experience in Microsoft Teams, followed by a Q&A. But before we get started, let me introduce myself. Hi, everybody. My name is Jayashree Ramakrishna. I go by Jay. I'm the head of industry for Adobe with a vertical focus on healthcare and life science. I collaborate with our enterprise customers on product innovation and digital transformation. Now let's get started with the trivia. So just to get us kick-started, if you haven't had your cup of coffee yet, this is the time to sort of energize ourselves. Feel free to get creative and put a response in the chat that we have open. So in 1968, video conferencing was first introduced and packaged as a commercial solution at the World's Fair in New York. What was it called? Oops. I guess I went a little too fast. So if you didn't see that response, I'm not sure if we can see the chat from here. I'll move on.
Yeah, I think the answer came up too quick. That's okay, though. We'll do the next.
I could not see the chat box, so maybe Samantha, if you're seeing some creative energy there, read them out for us.
Yeah, so no one responded. I think the answer came up a little quickly. That's why I was saying we can move to the next one. Okay. Sorry about that.
That's all right. But interesting little fun fact here. It was called the picture phone, and it was a year earlier when video was the first time the term got coined. So a little bit of trivia here. Apologies for that little hiccup at the start. So moving on to our next slide. So before we go into the poll, just wanted to have everyone reflect on their organization and where you might see hidden paper processes. So whether it's HR, if you're onboarding employees, you send out an email with contracts that need to be signed and then either mailed or emailed back or faxed back. You could have legal with your 10K filings that you have to sign and then maybe manually go upload that onto your website for public information. You could have your IT documents that are signed, and maybe they're contractors who are working on it or third-party groups where they sign it and mail it back to you. Security, any software that comes through goes through a security assessment, and sales contracts that are sent out. Now, what you're seeing on your right are all the entities within an organization that are standard, whether it is healthcare, retail, advertising. You're all going to have a HR department or an IT department or a sales and marketing department. What you see on the left is just broken down by the industry. Life sciences, you would have clinical studies, you would have research and development, process development, but these organizations also have paper processes that would need to be digitized. And then when we look at healthcare, such as a hospital or a dental office, a laboratory, a medical school that has, like Duke University, you would have a medical arm to it. They run clinical trials as well. A pharmacy, and pharmacies are expanding into the healthcare space. So let's think about all these heavily paper-driven processes, such as creating content, emailing content, faxing them, scanning them, and then finally having to file and archive this content. So as we try to digitize, a lot of these steps that are currently manual can be very quickly digitized by using Adobe Sign. So this time I'll try not to go a little too fast. And again, a poll from the audience and engagement is, now that you have seen or you've had a moment to think about efficiencies that you can gain within your organization, do use the chat to start letting us know of what are the key drivers that you think within your organization that could be digitized today. And I'll pause while I let people respond. And we'll give maybe 15 seconds. So are we seeing some energy on the chat, Samantha?
Yeah, we have one brave person who stepped up and said approvals. That's a good one.
Perfect.
Anybody else? It looks like we also have someone that joined in from Philly. Thanks for being here. California as well. Anybody else have anything that can gain productivity by digitizing their paper process?
Well, thank you to the brave souls that have typed into the chat. As you listen to the presentation,
we have
go ahead.
One more, Jay, is file sharing. I'm guessing file sharing, collaboration.
Perfect. As you probably listen to the presentation and things come up, feel free to continue typing on the chat. So what we see by digitizing these processes is about a seamless experience. We noticed that there's studies done where 1.5 hours was saved per signing through the process. Now, when we talk about the signing experience, we're talking about being it available across platforms, being it letting it have reminders that are sent so that when the reminder comes through, you can click on the link and sign your document. So anywhere, anytime, and that brings in those efficiencies. You're able to go 20 times faster to business, and that comes through these reminders that I mentioned, and you're removing all the delays, and especially paperwork. Once the document gets signed, to have it OCR'd and then filed manually, maybe into a filing cabinet, or you have to scan it so you convert it into a PDF if it came in originally as a fax, and then store it on SharePoint. All those processes that are done manually can be speeded up. And finally, you have a confident, continuous business where you have 420% return on investment. As I mentioned, all those manual processes where you're taking human capital hours to do work on activities are now coming in as an investment because those processes have been streamlined. So moving on to our industry snapshot, and let's get into telehealth after that. So we are at a time where COVID is top of mind for everyone around the world. And by looking at clinicaltrials.gov, we see just in the USA, there are 895 COVID-19 clinical trials. So there's an urgent need in this industry. If they're paper-driven, how do they come with speed to market? We've just heard the news on Pfizer and BioNTech making it to market, in AstraZeneca in England, and then recently we had Moderna. So there is this urgency to get these clinical trials completed so that they can make it to market. We're seeing a huge loss of jobs in the US, 3.2 million in October of 2020. And that translates to people losing their insurance, their company insurance, and maybe shifting on to their partner's insurance, or maybe shifting on, depending on their earning capacity, onto Medicare or Medicaid based on their age. So this requires for insurance companies to be competitive in terms of digitizing this entire process when people are switching their insurance plans that they would have to sign and send back. Security and privacy. As we start to digitize this landscape, there's a huge need to ensure that we're staying compliant and information is not being compromised. So back in 2019, 41.4 million patient records were breached. And actually, very recently, there was another significant breach that had taken place at a major hospital. But as we continue to digitize, organizations are going to have it top of mind to ensure that the patient records don't get hacked and information does not get compromised. Consumerization 2.0. The new consumer within the patient model requires a self-serve model. No longer is it that doctor knows best. Patients are coming to websites like WebMD and self-serving themselves with information so that they can visit their doctor with informed data. And so going online is becoming the default for patients to get information, to even get diagnosis. There's so many apps out there that are available where patients can have an early stage diagnosis rather than going into the traditional model of going to see their doctor to get a diagnosis or going to a lab. And we have smartphone dependency. So as people go online, we're seeing that there are more people who are being dependent on their smartphone. 1 in 5 adults in the USA are using their smartphone only for internet uses. So we're seeing this trend of people going online to get information, going onto their phone. And now as we come into telehealth with COVID, the traditional going to your brick and mortar hospital, while telehealth was available, we still leaned a lot on being on site to visit our doctor. But COVID and stay in place has driven a higher need for having virtual consults with your visit. 154% increase in March of 22 compared to what we saw in March of 2019. And the government has been putting in a lot of funds to support this model so that hospitals that cannot enable virtual care can enable it. And finally, regulations have been loosened to enable telehealth. And on that note, why telehealth and why now? So I think we're at a point where COVID has stretched long enough that there seems to be a default acceptance across the healthcare organization where meeting your doctor online for non-emergency cases is becoming the de facto. We see individuals who prefer to go online because now I don't have to get into my car, drive all the way over to visit my doctor from the luxury of my home. If I just have some general questions, I can meet my physician and get the same diagnostic information as long as it's not something that requires the physician to physically check me. I can have my virtual consult. They're afraid to go, people are afraid to go to a facility, or you have access where, for example, there are applications where if the physician needs to see you and they need to consult with another physician through the virtual care concept, it's all digitized. So like a conference call, a lot of this again is not new. You can have the physician, the doctor, and possibly a third physician come into the call, a third person come into the call to give any additional information. And sometimes it's not just from the physician's perspective, it's also from the patient perspective, because I might have a caregiver that I would like to have on the call with me as well. So all the logistics around trying to go to a brick and mortar hospital gets simplified with this digital experience. So frictionless experience. As I mentioned earlier, as this landscape starts to digitize, we could implement solutions where, if you think about it traditionally, I would have an application that I would install, and then I would use it. And then if I install a separate application, I would have to go into that. So there's no seamlessness with how I interact or the work that I need to do. So let's take an example. If I had to open up a Word document and start typing content, then I create a PDF. I would then open the document in a PDF application. When I wanted to come back to the PDF, I would have to open up my Acrobat and start editing it, right? Now, through Adobe's partnership with Microsoft, we have created a seamless experience with a lot of low-code connected experiences, and Michael Point will touch on that experience later during the demo. And Teams is the experience that we'll be touching on primarily. And as I mentioned, we'll be going through the demo that Michael Point will be giving us an overview of live signing experience in Microsoft Teams. But before I hand it off to Michael, I'm going to grab that screen back. And we will go into a Q&A session at the end of this presentation, at the end of the demo. But if you do have any questions or have ideas of where your organization can optimize your paper process and you did not type it in the chat, feel free to reach out to Simone Watkins, and here is her contact information. I will hold this for 5 seconds, and then Michael, I'll hand it off to you and let you introduce yourself to the audience. Okay.
Hey, Mike, you are on mute.
Sorry, I did the mute and unmute thing. It's not a presentation live unless you actually mess up the mute at least once, so I win. I'm Michael Point. I'm head of technical product marketing and evangelism here at Adobe. And I was really excited to hear that we're doing stuff in the healthcare and specifically to share at Live Sign. I'm responsible for managing a group of product marketing managers and evangelists. My team, we support product managers, partners such as yourselves, partner managers, field teams, and customers. So you as customers have become very important, and we work with partners such as Microsoft to provide our technology and how it works together. And I'm going to share you a little secret here. And Samantha wasn't aware of this, but I totally love Teams. I work in Teams all the time, and if you start working on technology, this is the best thing since sliced bread. So with that said, I'm going to share my screen.
We love to hear it, Mike.
No problem. So hopefully we got the right screen up and running now.
Yep, you're all good.
Believe it or not, it's the first time I use Teams as an event, so this is how easy it is to use. Now, I better not mess up, right, Sam? So what I want to do today is go through the Adobe Live Sign. And there's a couple of things you can take away from this, is that what do you do to get a signature and help someone collaborate during that signing, and you don't want to do it in person, especially with COVID, and we're going to have the ability to do this with Live Sign. And we're going to go through that and track the events. And what the technique is, so you remember, is visualize if I have a Adobe Sign bot, so your bots that come in Teams, that help you guide the person that's sending out the agreement and the person that's actually going to be signing the agreement. That bot will help you do that, and we'll see this live. Okay? So in today's session, there's going to be two characters I'll refer to, the clinician and the patient. So James Michael is going to be the clinician and Mary Reynolds will be the patient. Now, one thing about live signing, you've got to pay attention during the demo, because I'm talking and I'm presenting, but there's things that are happening because the screen is, I'll do my best to articulate when the screen changes so you guys can get the concept of the live sign. When you're in a live signing session, it becomes a lot easier. You're not looking at someone else from a third person. Okay, so a little mental challenge, but I think we can get through this. We're all smart people, and well, let's get going. Okay, and remember, when I do all this demo, it's all within Teams. And that's why I like Teams. I don't leave Teams unless I have to. But the more and more add-ins we get, makes my life easier, and it will make your life easier. All right, so you all know how to send out an email. Adobe Sign is just an add-in we put into Teams, and you're allowed to actually email or send for signature documents. So here's an example here. I'm basically playing the role of James, and in that I will send a document or agreement to Mary Reynolds. Okay, so super easy. I go in here, I type in her email. I can authenticate different ways, right? We'll use email today. I add the consent form. I can even do password protect, completion deadline, and set a reminder. And you know what? I can even do it written if needed, but hey, we are electronic, so we're going electronic. And once your forms are in there and your message is created, I can go into a little preview here and let's go take a look. This is where the power of Teams and Adobe Sign and Adobe Sensei. And you're probably, what the heck is Sensei? Sensei is the AI for Adobe. So a lot like Cortana, it will actually take this JPEG that I use as a form, because that's all I had of it. Could have been Word, could have been a PDF, but it goes and searches in it and it figures out these are form fields potentially, and I'm going to highlight them for you. And if I figure out there's a word like signature underneath, I'm even going to put a signature field there. So as the creator sending out that signature, it becomes really, really easy. Okay, so if this something doesn't come on there that I notice that it's missing, I can just drag and drop all these signature blocks, text, date fields, and etc. We're just going to go through right now and send it out. So this goes out and it's out to whomever I sent it to. When this one here, I'm just saying it out to Mary, but it could have been multiple individuals. Okay. And the next thing you do, which I hope you guys have scheduled meetings with Teams. Real quick, you just put the email of the person that you're going to have the appointment with. And this is going to be a medical appointment. You can sign that consent form with Mary, right? And I send that appointment out and I'm at the stage now that hey, Mary's accepted. I could have that live signing event. Okay. So this is the event. So now you're seeing James Michael, the clinician's screen, and he's talking to Mary. So what he does at this stage, he just adds the Adobe Sign bot. This will guide him through the process, as I mentioned before, right? So the first thing he does, he's going to say, well, I need to share an agreement with you to sign. He could have done that ahead of time. That's what we did today. Or I can actually go and find that agreement or do it online right now. I'm just going to go in and take the one that I just sent out. And it's the medical consent form, and I'm going to hit next. Now it has the agreement that's actually with Mary and the people that are in the room, which are James Michael and Mary Reynolds. I want Mary Reynolds to be the signer in this, so I'm picking her identity that's in Teams. So this is all happening for you. We're taking care of that, and you just click yes, I want a live sign with Mary Reynolds to do the live signing. James clicks done, and guess what? His screen, if he's looking at it again, he will see Mary, and he will also see this card. And it's the card that's been sent to Mary to review and sign. So let's switch now to what Mary sees. So we made a switch here. Mary's eyes see, of course, James, right? And that card that was just created. The medical consent form and review and sign. So it's as easy as this. I hit review and sign, and the first thing I do is I want to ensure that that email and that person matches up, and this is the confirmation. So Mary can confirm here before signing that she is who she is. And at this point here, we're sharing our screen. So I would have asked Mary to see, or James Michael would have asked to share the screen, and he could collaborate with her and get her to sign the document. Okay. So the neat thing here is that this process before, because you couldn't see if the person was signing, you couldn't ask them questions, right? So Mary'd be on her own, and James can be on helping her now and get things signed. Now the neat thing here is very important is that if you needed to see some photo ID, Mary could actually pull out her driver's license or her card, health card, and show it to James Michael at that time, and he can verify it and say, okay, we can continue with the signing. So the signing becomes pretty straightforward. E-signature like normal, she signs it, everything comes back, and the bot's done its job, right? Notice here it says Mary Reynolds attempting to sign. Mary Reynolds opened the agreement. Agreement signed by Mary Reynolds. That whole tracking's happened. All right. And at this point here, Mary can have her own copy of the document. She's also emailed a copy of the signed document, and so does James Michael. All right. That's it. That's it in a nutshell. And you're able to do this live signing and collaborate with your client or your patient and get things done.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Mike. That gave me an awesome visual, and I know that a lot of my healthcare customers will be pumped to see this. I have a couple of questions in the chat for you if you are open to it. Some good questions around. So one person is asking if this is HIPAA compliant.
Yes, it is.
Awesome.
Yes, we get that a lot.
Yeah, same here on the team side. So we'll send some documentation.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Next one is, can you use a template for these types of forms?
Absolutely, and that's the way we go. I just did not do it today, but you can definitely use a template. I'll add a little more to that question. My answer is that yesterday, my wife started a form in the medical. We were transferring from one doctor to another, and she basically emailed me a scan of a document with nothing on it, other than it was a piece of paper and signatures were spaces to write on. With that said, I quickly created for my whole family to sign. So all 5 of my family had to sign, and then Kelly had to sign again. That was done in about less than a minute, and I sent it out. All my daughters sent it back to me, and I had that clinical form. That's the ad hoc way, but if the form was ready and set for me before, that would go in the template. And that template becomes very key because you're not redoing anything. You could just send it out and you're way to go right away.
Awesome. Thanks for the example there too.
Samantha, if I could just, just add
please.
to that. I know we didn't touch on the end-to-end integration. So while we talked about the archiving process, the example that Michael just gave, we could also take the data once the form is submitted, signed, that those form fields can be submitted into your master record system so that you don't have all that content on paper. Now it's within your master system in structured format where you can run reports if you need to. So I just want to add that.
Yeah, that's excellent, actually. Power Automate is our friend too.
Yes, we love to hear that. And also keep the questions coming, audience. We're going to keep just going through the list here, but anything for Mike, anything for Jay, that's what they're here for today is you all. So next one is, okay, yeah, this is a good question. How hard is it to actually implement? So if we could maybe talk more about how to get started. I know a lot of these processes can seem overwhelming, but yeah.
Yeah, that's a good question. First of all, there's many integrations we have with Microsoft. What you've seen with Teams is just simply if you have an Adobe Sign user license, you just add that add-in, and your IT staff can add it for you, and they can block it for you. So some of you guys, I can't see it. I don't have it. Well, don't worry. That's because your IT says you're not getting add-ins. We're controlling all add-ins. Just go knock at their door and say, hey, listen, I'd like to get the Adobe Sign add-in. And then say it twice because you're going to really love it. And then next thing you know, you'll have the add-in in. And then you see me when I was working with it. Once the add-in's in, only when you do the first time you go get the bot in the conversation, that would just be available for you since the add-in's been put in. So there's not a lot of administration on the Teams integration.
Awesome. Sounds pretty simple. Anything you want to add there, Jay?
Hey, Sam, this is John. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, yeah.
Oh, great. So the only thing I wanted to add there also is when purchasing an Adobe Sign license, these integrations that we're talking about today with Microsoft and many others are included, within that license. So as Michael mentioned, it's as easy as having your IT add that on, but there's no additional cost for that. It comes included with the license because of the strategic nature of our of our partnership with Microsoft and other companies as well, but we're speaking specifically about Microsoft today.
Yeah, and that's a good point you make. It's that if I'm sending it out to a client or a patient, they don't need anything. It's only the sender that would have the license.
Okay.
And I like that point being highlighted because when we look at our enterprise customers, Microsoft and Adobe play a key role in being just the key infrastructure across enterprise-wide, because we're talking about productivity, right? So content that gets created are created through Microsoft and Adobe products. When we're talking about the Teams experience, we're talking about Microsoft. I mean, it doesn't have to be just healthcare. You could be using it for your IT department. You could be having conversations in video conferences. So when you're thinking about your use cases, you're just thinking about basic employee productivity across the organization.
Awesome. And actually, since we have your video up here, Jay, I think this question is more directed towards you about what are you most excited about when it comes to the future of work in healthcare? And obviously, Mike, feel free to jump in too. I love that question.
The future of work is I'm not seeing the question. Do you mind expanding on it?
Oh yeah,
Or
it just says it just says, what are you most excited about when it comes to the future of work in healthcare?
Okay. So with all this digitization, I get excited because I'm just going to lean a little bit of COVID because it's top of mind for everyone. You have all these studies that's buried in content, right? So if you think about the past where people have done a lot of clinical trials and they gathered all that information, especially when you have these large pharmaceutical companies that have a lot of legacy data. Gilead could be an example where they were able to revive an old clinical trial. And I'm going to brutalize the name, but remdesivir was revived and said, let's look at it for the use with COVID. So think about that, the turnaround time to scan through all that information and bring that study data back alive so that the scientists can actually look at that information and see if it's relevant. And those are all the benefits that digitization brings that I'm excited about.
I can add to that, Samantha.
Yeah.
So think of it, every day in my life, I actually try to be productive, and a lot of people do. And specifically in the healthcare, it's about being productive and not worrying about administrating. I got to get a document signed. I got to get someone come in. I just want to meet the patient. I even want to have a web conference. I need to get the legalities done and do this in a secure fashion. We have the capability to do that. COVID has a blessing in disguise. It made everybody think, you know what, why am I doing it on paper? So that means that things that you do, like my wife, my children, and anybody, your parents, your grandparents need to get anything done, you can even assist them. That's where the technology is going. And we'll get it signed, have a video conference with them. That's going to be a lot easier than, hey, my mom lives up in 300 miles away from me and she needs to see a doctor. Do I drive all the way up there? No, we can have it done all over web conference and get things done. That's just on the client side. Now imagine big pharmaceutical. I don't know how many people are here, but big pharmaceutical, there's stuff that just needs to get signed and approved. And what a better way to do it than a tool like Teams and video conferencing.
Awesome.
Yeah. I was just going to add, from a patient perspective, being recently going to doctors, seems like this digitization is starting to take hold a little bit. And, just the ease of use from the patient experience, getting a text message from my doctor or my provider. Here's a link, fill out all of the relevant information before the call, sign all of the things that I need to sign. I mean, that takes a huge burden off of, having to get there 15 minutes early with the clipboard and the and the pen and the paper. I mean, it's just, it's amazing for the patient from a patient's perspective. I just wanted to add that.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, John, Jay, Mike. This has been really awesome. And thank you so much to our audience. You've asked some great questions and we always appreciate you attending. I was looking back through the questions, and there were a couple about recording and resources. So definitely, what's going to happen is after this Teams live event recording renders, I'm going to post all of it to aka.ms/HLS blog. Then there was another question about who do I reach out to on the Adobe side to get this started. We will also post that information. I know Jay shared it earlier, but you don't have to memorize it. We'll post it directly in this blog as well, and we'll share it out to our Microsoft account teams, Adobe account teams. But really, I appreciate the Adobe partnership here with Microsoft. We all do, and we're all trying to help you all, our healthcare customers, during these intense times. So glad we could come together as a team today. And with that, thank you so much to everyone, and we'll see you next time.